Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video today, I'm going to show you how to make these super colorful watercolor bubbles using jars. For this project, you'll need watercolor paint. I'm using Winsor & Newton, fresh clean water, some paintbrushes, and 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. I'm also going to be using 3 different size jars for the technique to create the perfect circle for our bubbles. You can use any jars or sizes that you want, just use whatever you have. I'm also going to be using this pen cap for the really tiny bubbles. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is make the color puddles that we're going to dip the rim of our jars into. So we're going to want to make sure that our color puddle circle is as big as our biggest jar and that it kind of comes in as small as our smallest jar. And you'll be able to tell what I mean once I start dipping my jars into the puddle. So I just went with the classic bright yellow, a really pinky magenta, and a blue cyan type color. And I just wanted to keep it really classic and kind of like if a bubble was shining in the light, we would see some of those primary colors from the rainbow kind of shining through. So you want to make them pretty puddly because you want them to be wet enough to transfer from the rim of the jar and then onto the paper. You want to make sure it's still highly pigmented though. So I'm going to start with my biggest jar. And the goal is to make sure that the entire rim of the jar is covered in the watercolor. And then you're going to press it down onto your paper to transfer the watercolor onto the paper. This not only gives us the perfect circle for the bubble, but it also transfers over the color that we're then going to use clean water to kind of dissipate throughout the whole bubble so it looks really transparent, but it has just a slight tint of that color with a nice, beautiful, colorful edge. So this is just clean water. So after you push the paint onto the paper, rinse your brush or use a new brush to just take plain clean water and really get the color from the edges of the bubble to flow into the center. You want the bubble to be really, really light in color and look like a transparent bubble, so it shouldn't be highly colorful. For this bubble, I did add in a little bit more color because I felt like some of the color didn't come through the sides as much as I wanted it to, and it helped give it a little bit more depth and form. And just continue to make more bubbles in that exact same way, varying the different sizes, pressing the paint down onto the paper after you've got it on the rim, and then using clean water to spread the color into the center of the circle. So this first set of bubbles is what I'm going to call the first layer. So we want to do a bunch of them kind of randomly around and then let them totally dry so that we can start layering more bubbles on top. Once we're able to do an overlapping circle shape, that's when they start to look like bubbles because the transparency of the watercolor will look like a transparent bubble and we'll be able to see those circle shapes underneath. So again, you don't want to layer until everything's completely dry because then the bubbles will just mesh and bleed into each other. We want them to be very distinct. So I've got my first layer done. I just did the 3 shapes of my jars. I let that completely dry, and now I'm going to show you how I'm doing like a little speed painting where I'm layering the bubbles over the top. So I'm pretty much doing the exact same thing, but I am making sure that they're layered. The reason that that works is because watercolor is transparent, and as long as you're not overdoing the strokes, the watercolor underneath will stay as it is. So this is a layering technique in watercolor called glazing or layering, And it is really helpful in situations like this where we want to actually see the layers and the objects that are underneath the ones that we're painting. So this, as you can see, makes it really look like bubbles because you can see through bubbles, you can see the other bubbles that are next to it. And then I thought, man, I really need a tiny little bubble because I blow bubbles for my kids all the time and there's lots of little bubbles. So I used this pen cap to go around and make some fun little overlapping tiny bubble shapes. I did a bunch all at once, and then I went through with a wet brush and kind of just did some small circle shapes just to blend out some of the hard lines within the bubble. So this is looking really great. This is pretty much done, but I thought it would be fun to add a couple of splattered areas where it looks like the bubble has popped. And you know exactly what I'm talking about when you see a bubble pop and it's got that foamy spray off. That's what I wanted to look like. So I didn't want it all over, just in a couple of specific spots. And that is it. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial today. I hope it inspired you to go out and paint something simple and fun and to use maybe some objects in your household that you didn't think you could use to paint watercolor. Let me know if you try this one out. Tag me on social media. I would love to see it. I'll see you all next time. Bye.